This episode of the Citadel Cafe is brought to you by listeners like you. Visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe to find out how you can become a patron and help make this show possible. This is the Citadel Cafe, episode number 464 for Wednesday, April 26th, 2023. My name is Joel Duggan, and the Citadel Cafe is where my friends and I hang out to talk about the geeky stuff that we are into. Joining me this week, Brockett Vola is back, the cat Volver on all the social media that matters. Welcome back, my friend.
Hey, thank you. I'm back 2 months in a row. The streak's alive.
Spring has sprung. And that means that it is getting close to summer movie time. And you and I have a little game we like to play around this time of year on the show called Pass or Play. And you have come prepared, apparently.
Yes, I call it maybe I'm a shut-in dad who we'll get to it. I've only seen one movie in theaters in the last 4 years, maybe. Basically, my timeline was my children were expected. So I saw Incredibles 2 in theaters. Wow, it seems a long time ago.
That was a long time ago.
Then I saw Rise of Skywalker in theaters after Emmy was born. And then since then, I've seen, spoiler, Super Mario Brothers movie when we get there.
Okay.
That's it, Joel. Those are the 3 films I have seen in theaters. Now, of course, there are some movies that have been released to streaming either simultaneously or a few weeks after, and I've caught up with some of the big name things, yada, yada, yada. But in theaters, I've seen 3 movies since basically 2019. So I maybe call me overzealous. I was looking through this summer, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many movies I'm at least aware of in my shut-in life as a father. So I can only imagine some of the other ones I may have forgotten. I tried to check AV Club, which is a great source for movie stuff, powered by The Onion and some other websites I kind of trust and stuff like that. And then, just ones whenever I was Googling 2023, I was like, I've heard of that at least. So it must be on the radar, at least in the States. So we've got a lot of them, but as is the want for Pass or Play, the focus is whether you would like to play the film, as in see the upcoming film, or pass on it. Now, it's pretty cut and dry in this hot take society. Joel and I would like to play it pretty hard and fast. So if you have any hesitation, we generally just hit pass. Now, that doesn't mean that some of these films we won't at some point watch. And maybe, Joel, 3 or 4 months after whatever movie comes out, you've heard so much about it, you're on your couch or it's streaming, or who knows, you're just bored and somehow you find yourself magically in a movie theater and you watch it. That doesn't mean that obviously, you should have hit play or whatever. But this is gut instinct. You see it, you know something about it, or you know very little about it, and you're just watching trailers like in the old days and making a decision off of that. So I think where we're going to start, Joel, is you've prepared some of the current movies that are currently out.
Right.
Current movies that are currently out. Very good podcasting for Pass or Play. So if you want to start with that list, then I'll take over for the ones that are coming out soon.
Well, I just looked up the release date for Rise of Skywalker because I didn't remember it off the top of my head. And it was December 20th, 2019. I knew it was a Christmas movie because my family went. My dad and his partner and myself and my sister. That was the thing that we did for the 3 years that these, or not 3 years because they were separated by more than 3 years. But the new Skywalker sequel trilogy we saw in theaters. And that would have been the last film that I saw in theaters before COVID hit. And so while I don't have any kids, COVID definitely stayed my theater going experience. And I have seen one film since, Top Gun Maverick. That was the film that I saw last summer, and I have not been back to the theaters since. And one thing I wanted to ask you about this whole pass or play rules and regulations, now that the 4 years have gone by, 3 years has gone by since COVID first kind of changed everything about going to theaters, and streaming services have come up quite a lot. Are we talking about pass being I will never watch it, or is it pass as in that's not enough to get me into a theater? Just out of curiosity.
No, that's a good question, because I do feel like obviously the cost of bringing yourself to a movie theater might be one way. The cost for me bringing my whole family to a movie theater is dramatic.
It's gonna be $100.
Exactly. And plus, yeah, everything involved. So, let's put it this way. If you feel compelled in a perfect world, Joel, day one of the movie's release, you had access to it either in theater and in theater specifically, like you feel compelled to actually go to the theater to see it, or day one, if you had the option to on your home system see it, would you that day do it?
Right.
Because I think the thing with streaming is we sometimes wait, but by that time we've heard enough about it,
Yeah.
or anticipation has built by then. But this is gut instinct day one when it's released. So sometimes movies gain momentum. You know, famously, the Hangover franchise like was considered a super dud. It was going to be just thrown away, I think, in the late August time window when summer movies usually are left to die, and it became a massive, massive super hit, reviving the R-rated comedy for adults and all this sort of stuff and whatever. But that one I've seen in past decades keeps kind of being brought up in this way. But we're not talking about momentum movie. We're talking about day one. Are you interested? You have the ability to be in theaters on your own power or in your own home setting, but I'm popping it on. I have access to it. So it's day one, your interest in seeing it,
Right.
in whatever fashion that is.
So the first movie on my right now edition list is Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. This I would like to see in theater because it looks like a cool spectacle. It has been out for almost a month, but I have heard very good things from both D&D players as well as their kind of relayed reviews from their spouse or other family members that are maybe not as steeped in D&D also really enjoying it. So it seems like the word there would be accessible and an awful lot of fun. So Dungeons and Dragons for me is I'd like to see it in theaters before it goes. And I think that I need to retrain my brain to be default to, yeah, it's perfectly fine to go to see things in theaters now. I don't mind the cost of it. I can usually, because I work from home, I can find a weekday matinee or something like that where it's not going to cost me all that much.
Right.
It's a fun thing to go do with a friend, you know, if you can find someone that's available, that kind of stuff. So for me, it's no longer that there is a reason not to go to the theater. It's that I have to retrain my brain after 3 years of stay home. You know, I have to say,
Yeah.
look, you know, like I go to the gym 4 or 5 times a week. If I'm picking up anything, it's going to be there. It's not going to be at the movie theater, right?
Yeah.
I'm just also
Yeah.
really busy too, right? Like I stream a lot. I've got the podcast going on, and again, returning to the gym as you get older, you tend to want to sleep a lot. So like if someone says, "Hey, you want to go see a movie?" and it's like a late show at 9:30, I'm like, "No, I don't," because nothing is made these days that's not 3 hours long, and I have to get up at 6:45 to go to the gym. So
Right.
so there's that too. But yeah, Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that in theaters.
I have heard exactly similar. I've heard two of my stalwarts that I reference on the show, two of my friends, past co-hosts of podcasts and stuff. One of them, Dan Hall, is a pretty big D&D guy, and he's pretty critical of things. And he really enjoyed it. He thought, as a D&D player and a DM himself at times, you could see some of the mechanics that the movie was trying to do that could Easter egg or nod towards if this was a role-playing thing. And he really enjoyed that, and he just thought overall, I mean, he's a big Chris Pine stan, so I think just the charm of Chris Pine as, I believe, the bard type character is of course probably going to carry that movie because he's great, and I think that's a great class of D&D character for him to play. But yeah, it's a big play for me. If I had access to it today, if it was streaming on any of my devices, at this point, for free, I'd be playing it right away. So, and obviously, if I had access to go to the theater, I was invited to go. Our kids were sick a little bit this last week, so I wasn't able to bump out with some other dads. But yeah, I was really excited and am excited to see Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves whenever I can.
Next on the list, which you mentioned, I think that you have seen, is Super Mario Bros. The movie, and I will say yes, 100% interested. I saw the trailer originally, and I've actually been skipping the other trailers because I feel like with animated films these days, unfortunately, they tend to oversell them and they show you an awful lot in the trailers. And I
Mm-hmm.
like the little one-off moments in those films. As an animator from years ago, I just really appreciate all that kind of stuff. And Illumination does really good work, and I've heard very good things. I went out to the pub with a couple of friends last Thursday, and one of them who had kids took his oldest to their first movie. James the Civilian, as a matter of fact, that's been on this show. And he had very good things to say about the Super Mario Brothers movie. And as someone that is a Nintendo fan and grew up playing Nintendo, still plays Nintendo, he said the same thing he thought about um, the Dungeons and Dragons film, which is that it is accessible. So there's something for
Mm.
everybody in the Super Mario Brothers movie, and apparently it's just really, really good. And so I'm looking forward to seeing that as well. That's on my list. It seems so bright and colorful and fun. Like that's the kind of thing like I'd like to go and see, because at home with a lot of the streaming services, I've actually canceled Netflix for the time being, just because every time I go searching for things, with the exception of shows like maybe Ted Lasso or a couple of animated things on Netflix that I mean I ended up finishing, like I everything is just so dark and dreary. It's like post-apocalyptic, like the world
Yeah.
is ending.
Mm.
Nothing is bright and colorful. And so I'm looking forward to seeing Super Mario Brothers in theaters.
Let me give you some context. One, I saw it for a child's birthday, so the theater had been rented out. It was all parents and their children. We brought both Emmy and Ainsley, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Wow.
By the time we got in our seats, we were in the second row, staring up at the massive screen. And this was the first time we were ever in theaters with our two children, who at home will generally sit through movies for about 45 minutes, and almost always only movies with songs. And it went great. It was probably one of the paramount moments as a parent right now I've had. The
Wow.
movie was great. The experience was great. It just everything worked out great. Ainsley was the only one the last 20 minutes getting up to walk between her chair and Laura and I's chairs to get little M&Ms, and that distracted her enough to get her through the climax, and that was great. It's a really tight 90-minute movie, and just back to your original point, I think A, very smart for children. B, very smart for anything that bright and bombastic as far as characters and colors. Like at some point your brain, like that's the one thing about the Avengers films that are really fun, but sometimes you go back and you're like, wow, my eyes feel like they've been like sucked out of their sockets, cuz like, and I'm sure this will be the case with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, is like I love that the Marvel films are so bright and splashy and boom and so much is happening, but when it's over 3 hours, your brain and your eyes are just sucked dry sometimes. So 90 minutes for a Super Mario Brothers film was really smartly done. I agree with the Illumination thing. I think as a studio now, I would kind of put them right behind Pixar as far as the best CGI studio out there. Well, for like storytelling and whatnot. But also the graphics of this was really great. And I was very skeptical across the board, all the actors. But Chris Pratt was good. Charlie Day was good, and honestly, I think what was surprising to me, who ended up being less obtrusive than I thought they were going to be, was Jack Black as Bowser. I thought it was going to be, now, of course, it's a lot more Bowser, fun for the kids type of Bowser. But he straight up is quite menacing enough that he does a great balance at times. When he first showed up, Emmy was scared in theaters, but by the end, Emmy was enjoying a lot of it because they do a good balance of like what we kind of grew up in the 80s with some of these Skeletor type bad guys, which were like
Yeah.
menacing to look at, and at times would do something that you're like, oh God, that's right. They're not good people. But then they would have just enough there that could balance them out. That would prevent you from just being utterly like terrified and pulling the sheets up. So no horned kings here, more Skeletors as far as Bowser's concerned. But and if you don't know anything about the film, I won't spoil it. But there's going to be an earworm besides the classic Mario Brothers songs that'll come out of this movie for you, Joel. For better or for worse, there's going to be some music stuff that's going to come out, and if you have children, be prepared for the next however many months of your life for it to be certain songs over and over again. But it's great. My girls like to listen to Super Mario Brothers music now. And yeah, I could gush about it. Maybe once you've seen it, I'll come back on the show, or I'll listen when you talk to somebody else. But it's good.
I'd like to talk about it on the show for sure. And I mean, it's breaking records, 377 million globally in the first 10 days. I don't think it's been released in Japan yet. It's surpassed Frozen 2's 358 million earnings, and it's on track to surpassing like 5 billion or something like that to enter into like the 13 films, you know, around the world that are like the top earners, you know. People, I don't know all the back, you know, data on it, but people are projecting that by the time it's done its run, it might be up there with things like Avatar, Star Wars, like that kind of thing. But the fact that it's not, the fact that it's knocking at the doors of something like Frozen 2 is spectacular and great for Illumination. Like, I think it's very cool that they've got, you know, the Super Mario Brothers franchise, and that they can potentially make more, hopefully not more of the same, but like maybe they can do other Nintendo stuff. Like, I mean, people would lose their minds for a Zelda movie, I'd imagine. So
yeah, I imagine. Yeah.
So there could be more. And when things like this are good and do very well financially, especially with how expensive animated films are, it does open the doors for other investments and stuff. So that could be very, very cool. Yeah. In a completely different tone, John Wick 4. And this is something that I will say I am very interested in seeing, but it's not going to get me into the theaters. It's usually a short run. I, again, have a very busy schedule. I like the films, but they're something that I really kind of enjoy at home. Kind of like, I watched the first 3 at home. I don't even know if I finished the third one. And not because I didn't like it. I just got distracted and I just never got back to it. But I do like them. I don't think I need to see them in a theater. I just like kind of experiencing them at home. So John Wick 4 is one of those things like, yeah, I'll see it when it's available on streaming. And it'll probably be like, when it comes available on streaming, that's my weekend movie. Like, that's my Saturday night sort of chill thing with John Wick 4. How about you?
I'm exactly the same. I'd say play. But I also saw all 3 of them after the fact by the time they came to HBO Max in the States. I think probably I still prefer watching these on devices at home because it's an action film, and modern action films, John Wick's a little bit better, but they still have a lot of jump cuts. They still have a lot of like, oh, everyone's wearing black. I hope somebody I like is not dying because I don't know what's happening. But what I've loved most about the John Wick films, truly, and this is really silly, is they constantly show him reloading his gun. And in modern action films, if you know anything, the fact that they at least show that detail is phenomenal, because you're used to the classic 6 bullet revolver person somehow shooting like a 900 bullets in a scene. And like, those things aren't fast. So the fact that he is an efficient killer and they show that little bit, those details are, I think, what have made the John Wick franchise really interesting for me. You got to see the end of John Wick 3 though, Joel, because John Wick 4 is relying very heavily on that, just like John Wick 3 was off of 2. Okay, so just make sure the John Wick films are not necessarily like, I've lost track, but Mission Impossible films where they kind of still encapsulate themselves a little bit with small details that carry over. The John Wick films are an ongoing story.
100%.
So you definitely got to catch up with all of them. But I will also play that as well.
I think I'm going to rewatch 3. Like, I forget enough. I remember 1 and 2 because I'm pretty sure I've watched 1 a couple of times, and I think I rewatched 2 before I watched 3. So I think I've seen the first 2 a couple of times. I mean, they're worth watching anyway. They're just a lot of fun. I know what you mean about the reloading though, because I mean, and I thought to myself when I'm watching this, like, man, he's reloading a lot, and I thought, well, he is putting entire clips into people, so he's kind of out. Like, you are when you fight John Wick, you are dead. Like, there's no question. You know, like you're full of holes, which I found both like a little excessive, but also kind of entertaining. Like, they do such a good job of like skirting the line of like over the top versus like, well, you know, whatever. Like, it's a secret society of killers. We got to have a little bit of fun here. The last movie on my right now list is 65, which is a sci-fi action thriller starring Adam Driver. And while he's a good actor, I'm not a big horror thriller person, so I won't be seeing this in theaters. It also, because it has been out for a little bit, it's getting pretty bum reviews. 5.5 on IMDb out of 10, 35% on Rotten Tomatoes, 40% on Metacritic. It is not landing very well.
Remind me, it's basic. It's he's like in 65 million years, so it's like he's kind of been time shot
I
into
think so.
like a Jurassic period, and it's slightly like that. Yeah, I think right now the thing that, if I can just slingshot to the future, like as this superhero phase maybe phases out, maybe burns out the way westerns and army movies sort of phased out as my generation grew up a lot with that, and super spies. And now as superheroes can possibly phase out, I think again we'll see a resurgence of high fantasy kind of Dungeons and Dragons, showing that a little bit. You could, I guess, kind of say that about Super Mario Brothers a little bit. It's more high fantasy than it is science fiction, and then high science fiction. And I think, people like Chris Nolan have proven for a long time high science fiction has a place. Peter Jackson has proven high fantasy has a place. So eventually, I think those big genres will again bring a lot more power lately. But because of that, when you kind of have a lull in that sort of stuff, I feel like the quality for, like a studio is going to get the script for 65 and be like, well, we have these 9 other big films we want to work on. Let's put our best people on them, potentially. Or some of the best writers in Hollywood are going to be like, I can't sell a script that takes place 65 million years ago, so I'm focusing that. So sometimes the talent gets drawn towards the bigger, more popular things, for better or for worse. Until new people come up and they're like, hey, I'm fresh, I'm hungry, I don't want to do what everyone else is doing, I need to make a name for myself. And then that's when you get kind of the genre breakers out there. So I'm gonna pass on 65 as well.
That's it for me. What's kicking off your list?
All right, so coming up right around the fresh corners, ready to suck the sauce out of your eyeballs. That sounds terrible. Tears also sounds really sad. Ready to just dry your eyeballs out with spectacle and liven your vocal cords with laughter, hopefully, is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, the much anticipated third Guardians film. Since Endgame, we're back. The whole, if you followed it, if you haven't, just the whole back and forth saga with Peter Gunn and his involvement with this franchise and the whole DC stuff is a very interesting inside baseball Hollywood type of thing. But regardless, Peter Gunn is back with the Guardians. They're one big happy family, supposedly. And here they are. They're out with a new film. I'm pretty excited because of, the first Guardians was a big surprise. I think it caught everybody off guard. I think everyone was literally circling it as the MCU's biggest major super flop. Never realizing that Thor 2 should really be considered its big super flop. But yeah, Guardians, they still continue to be really enjoyable. I enjoy a lot of what they've done. I believe this might be the last hurrah as far as voice acting is concerned for Bradley Cooper and Vin Diesel and Rocket and Groot, respectively. I have no idea. Literally have researched nothing to know if they have continued those contracts the same way they kind of got Hemsworth, Downey, and Chris Evans to continue on with their characters through the Avengers Endgame part of things. So there could be a big shakeup in the Guardians world after this film. Could not. Who knows? But I'm going to play this one for sure.
Play for me as well. And I have been avoiding trailers beyond the first teaser. I saw some TikTok reactions to additional trailers and people voicing their concerns about, potential characters, dying and whatnot. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to go see it. I'd rather go in cold. Again, with movie franchises and movies, especially when they're trying to kick off the next phase of Marvel stuff, they really are hard selling a lot of these things. And I feel like they overdo it sometimes, and they'd be better off to play it secretive, I think. The Guardians of the Galaxy movies are not my top movies. When I rewatch, the Marvel Cinematic Universe from time to time, they are usually ones that I skip. They are fun and they're beautiful. They're so colorful compared to a lot of the other stuff. Because even like Captain America got kind of dark. Like a lot of everything got muted, and it's cool. Don't get me wrong. I like my Captain America stuff, but I do like the bright nebula space travel, dudes covered in gold. Like it's just there's all kinds of craziness with the Guardians of the Galaxy. There's a talking raccoon. Like you get some leeway, in terms of creativity and stuff. And the only thing that I'll say is, and this is a me thing, I don't like awkward humor, and they tend to hammer that stuff a lot in Guardians of the Galaxy. It's not as bad as Thor Love and Thunder. Like it's not like write the joke on a bat and beat you with it until you're blind. It's a little bit more subtle than that, but they're not always my favorite moments. A lot of that stuff has to do with Drax or Mantis. But weirdly, I really enjoyed the holiday special. So
I haven't seen it, so I haven't seen that.
Worth checking. I mean, it's very Christmassy, so maybe wait and watch it. Although I don't know if there's a little bit of a plot in there that you might want to bring yourself up
be
to
aware of. Well, classic Disney.
Yeah.
It's fine.
The weaving is there.
I'll try and catch it at some point.
That's a play for me. I'd like to go see it.
You say that. I've noticed maybe what they've done. I'm probably totally wrong, but just off the top of my head, a lot of the MCU right now, the cosmic-based stuff, the space stuff, has been really bright. If you look at Captain Marvel, you look at Guardians, you look at what they've done with some of these things. They've always been pretty bright, but a lot of our classic Earthbound heroes, over the series of those franchises have kind of gotten a little bit less. So Ant-Man had to go to, I guess, the Quantum Verse. I haven't seen that, but it looks bright and splashy again because it's not of Earth. So terrestrial things seem to have gotten this weird muted filter, but they're still pumping out the bright classic Marvel color scheme for the other realms of the universe. So speaking of realms of universe, terrestrial stuff, things that probably continue on, probably long past we're dead, Joel. We've got Fast X, Fast 10, Fast and Furious, number 10, coming out May 19th in the States. What is your verdict?
Hard pass. Saw the first one whenever it came out in theaters years ago and have not seen any others.
That was a quick answer. Quickly, I will also answer pass, but I will put this caveat. For biggest fan of my old podcast a long time ago, I did the franchise and I was pretty much just laughing at it. We timed it up so Fast 5 was coming out. And up until that point, I really thought that the franchise was just pretty much a joke. Fast 5 as its own film can kind of stand alone as a pretty solid heist movie. I think Fast 5 is one of the few. You haven't revisited since the first one. If you ever find yourself, it's still got all the problems with sort of but like it's still well built. I think that was the point where somebody came into the franchise, did something different, it worked really well, and then that propelled the rest of these, which is probably, in my opinion, gone down in quality since. But again, Fast 5 is the one I recommend, but pass on Fast X. Coming to theaters in a live action form, Disney's classic The Little Mermaid on May 26th in the States. How do you feel about this, Joel?
Hard pass. I'm not interested in any of the live action remakes that Disney is doing.
That is interesting. You would think as a family, well, of course my girls are interested in it. We probably will see it. So it's going to be a play. But I also have been kind of confused by the live action remakes because it feels like Disney is realizing that if they redo the exact movie to some degree, even down to maybe the songs, that then they could still cash a paycheck, which is frustrating to me because if you're going to make a remake, you need to be making a new statement. But that's probably just me as an old person. So it's going to be a play in the Vola household. As a personal person, if I was on an island by myself, it would be a pass. But don't let anybody outside this room hear that. Okay, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, June 2nd in the States, the much anticipated sequel to Spider-Man. What was the first one called?
Into the Spider-Verse.
There you go. Okay. Anyway, pass or play for this, Joel?
Oh, play. 100% play.
You're a big fan of the first one?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the first one. I think I missed it in theaters. I did end up watching it at home. And what was really cool about it was because I watched it at home, I think after I got my Govee reaction lights on my TV. So talking about bright, colorful films, like this was a really fun thing. And I remember seeing it going like, I really should have gone to see this in theater. Like that was a misstep. So I'm 100% seeing Across the Spider-Verse in theaters.
In theaters. Okay. That was my next question. Is this one going to push you into theaters? So far on the list, Guardians you're going to play, but Spider-Verse right now might be the one movie we've mentioned that is going to propel you to get out to theaters to see it, correct?
Yep.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, it looks great. It's a big play for me. I was really, really, really pleased and surprised by all the big choices made in it. In the first one, and the animation looks right on point. I mean, it looks like they're just going to continue straight out of what they did the first time, and that's great. I think it. Hopefully, the depth of the storytelling they had in the first one continues, and they don't have any step backs on any particular thing. But from the very loose teasers I've seen, I'm like you, Joel. I try and avoid as much as possible. Also, I just don't have access to a lot of it unless I seek it now. Not watching a lot of live television. But yeah, I'm really excited about it, and I'll be interested to see where Miles finds himself in the next film. So, all right, the next film you might not be as aware of, so I'll try and give a little bit more context. It's called The Boogeyman. Comes out June 2nd in the States. Whoops. Maybe they're trying to cash in on anybody who isn't going to spend all their money to go see Spider-Man. It's based on a short story by Stephen King. And apparently this was scheduled just to go to Hulu for streaming services, but that tested really well. So they're going to put it out in theaters. Probably again in classic Hollywood tradition of putting out something spooky and more adult on the opposite spectrum of the big splashy summer blockbuster that could be for families. Maybe that's why it's out June 2nd. But basically it's two girls in a house. They've lost their mother. Their father's a therapist. And then they have a weird, creepy, possibly supernatural visitor that evening who is there to, I believe, to some degree, prey upon their emotions and their like the trauma of their mother's passing. True Stephen King, both physical and emotional and psychological horror seems to be possibly involved here. I know your stance on horror films, but I always have to add them, Joel. So please let me know. Pass or play on The Boogeyman?
Yeah, hard pass.
Okay. I'm going to say pass. And this is one that sure I might visit some point in time, but I'm not propelled in this moment to go see it. So I'm going to go ahead and hit pass for The Boogeyman as well. Next up, a franchise that has some serious up and downs, but on television recently seems to have had a pretty good resurgence based on our conversations, Joel. So are you going to pass or play the new live action big tentpole Transformers Rise of the Beasts out June 9th in the States?
I probably have been too jaded by them to go see it in theater. So I will probably watch it just because it is Transformers and they were such a big part of my childhood. But that's the kind of thing where like I'll watch it the weekend it comes out on streaming. But I've just not seen enough of home runs from the Transformers franchise to go see it in theater. I think the last that I saw in theater was Bumblebee, which I really liked.
Mm-hmm.
And this is supposed to be the spiritual sequel to both Bumblebee and Last Night, which I think was the last film that the Transformers put out. So I don't know. I liked Beast Wars when it was on TV. It's terribly dated. The stuff in the trailer looks cool at first, but the more you see of the Beast Wars Transformers, the less interesting they look. Like Optimus Primal is gray, and there's like you can't see any detail on them. Like anything that they learned from the Bumblebee movie, they feel like they've unlearned. Now, on the flip, Optimus Prime is a proper square, I think it's a Mack truck. So they're no longer beholden to like the GMC, Chevy contract. So they look different. Peter Cullen is back as Prime. Like it's really tempting, but I think the track record just says it's a pass for me for theaters, but I'll play it eventually.
Okay. In the spirit of things, referee Brockett will step in and say, anybody keeping score, Joel's passing on this movie. He will eventually see it, but his gut reaction is to pass on it. So, like if you're like, yeah, he's speeding towards watching a film. This one is passing by in his rearview mirror, possibly passing by in your rearview mirror, not leaning one way or the other. Joel. Strays out the same weekend, June 9th in the States, is a Will Ferrell. I think it's Jamie Foxx. Sorry, I haven't pulled it back up, but they're voicing live action dogs. So talking dogs in live action. Sweet. It's a comedy. What do you think about Strays, Joel?
Hard pass for two reasons. One, I don't watch those kind of films, and two, Will Ferrell out. Not interested.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Out on Wolf. All right. I'm also going to pass on it as well. I think the talking dog thing, I know this is probably going to be more geared towards adults than it would be something like, Homeward Bound, The Incredible Journey back with Michael J. Fox and whatnot. But I think as a genre, it's not something that's grabbing me in any direction. So, well, yeah, it's going to be a pass for me as well. Oh boy. Talk about superheroes, drama, Hollywood inside baseball. Do not look up all the ins and outs that came from The Flash movie if you're interested or excited to see it, because I think that is why I'm having a real hard time struggling with deciding on pass or play for The Flash, coming out June 16th in the States, starring Ezra Miller. Also, well, I won't spoil it, but there's some other big names that are involved with this. This is supposed to help kind of reset, oh boy, for like the 100th time, the DC cinematic universe a little bit. And they're still supposedly planning for it to be part of that reset. So Joel, The Flash, where do you stand on that?
Pass. Don't like Ezra Miller as the Flash, regardless of anything in his personal life. I didn't like him in any of the other, films that he was in. And I don't think that James Gunn, it just doesn't. DC is a dumpster fire as far as films go for me. Every time I try to give it a shot, they just disappoint me, and so I'm not interested at all. I'll wait to see if and when DC decides for the fourth time to redo Superman and see what people say before I'm ever giving DC a chance again. The fact that James Gunn has had to have like 2 or 3 video blog releases to explain what's going on doesn't bode well for me, for what they're planning. And the plan sounds dumb. Like, it's like, we're launching with the Flash movie that we've spent too much money on that we have to release. And the other films that are coming are, here's 3 franchises. And I'm just like, I'm a pretty solid DC, hero fan. And I didn't recognize any of the franchises outside of Superman. I was like, okay, I've got no idea what they're doing. And I mean, maybe some hardcore DC fans do, but like, to me, it's just like, they're just too far up their own butts. Like, it just doesn't appeal.
It's reactionary. DC at this point has reacted so much to what the Marvel MCU has done that they keep trying to retread similar thought patterns. They keep trying to get a big time mine, in this case, James Gunn, to come out and help fix and redo everything. Zack Snyder was supposed to be that mind, and it didn't work then. They also keep trying to do, okay, so Dark Knight was dark, let's make dark superheroes. Well, Marvel succeeded because their characters were bright and fun and had a sense of humor, and the story and the emotions and the arcs they went through could touch on things that were heavy or dark, and that would be where that would come from. But the whole plot of the movie wasn't dark and broody, even for characters that you would think Hulk would be incredibly broody. They finally got Hulk right with the Avengers film, and since then I feel like they've done a pretty good job with the Hulk franchise. They've really self-corrected there. DC reacts in all these different ways. They keep putting out, I feel like Aquaman, which was kind of like wet Thor, was fun. The first Shazam was fun. Those tried to do something. And so now they're like, let's take more obscure characters so we can really fail big maybe on them, or hit big and then build off of those. But it's still, it's all reactionary. It's all very after. I don't see the thought process of the DC minds being like, let's not just exactly look at something and blueprint it or try and tweak our blueprint. And I'm also incredibly nervous about yet another Superman film, mostly because as Superman's my favorite character, I'm staring at a little statue of him. I continue to be worried over and over and over again with this, what the character has been through over the years. So I'm going to pass on The Flash as well. Coming out the same weekend in the States, actually all of the next 2 are also coming out the same weekend in the States, June 16th. Elemental, the Pixar film. If you're not aware of this one, basically there's a world of elements, walking fire spirits, walking water spirits, walking tree, all the elements of the earth. Every part of the city has their own sort of thing. I have heard this dubbed sort of like as Pixar's Zootopia. And to some degree, some of the teasers look similar to that, although it might be a little bit less societally commentative, the way Zootopia was in some ways if you watched it. But anyway, Elemental by Pixar coming out June 16th in the States. Joel, pass or play?
Play, because I'm really interested in this kind of thing. I find that whenever Pixar breaks the mold, then I get surprised. And when they don't, lately it seems to let me down. So, for example, Inside Out, loved it. Really surprised by it. Coco, absolutely loved Coco. Onward, another slightly different take for Pixar, loved it. And then didn't see Soul, saw Luca, wasn't the best. Turning Red, I never finished it. Lightyear, like that. And so I'm looking forward to Elemental.
I see. Yeah. I could see what you're saying. It definitely seems like they're trying to create a different entire type of world to the point where you're like, wow, Pixar is just constantly giving Disney more ideas for theme park additions because of how they keep creating from the ground up worlds. But all that inside baseball aside, I'm actually going to pass. I know. And I think it's because Pixar's track record, now again, I was younger, I was single. Every Pixar film that came out when I was all the way up until the movie Up was a must watch, because Pixar just had this amazing track record, even to the point where like Cars, when I saw it in theaters, I was like, hey, it wasn't as bad as I thought. And I now have a slight appreciation for Cars, even as weak as it is compared to those original, I think 10 or so. But I won't lie, even things like Toy Story 4, at points I just felt, oh yeah, I feel like we're missing or we're stretching. And I love Turning Red, but Luca did not hit for me. Lightyear was great for what it was trying to do, but I want more films from Pixar that are trying to do that, just not trying to do that from a franchise they have. Like,
yes, I agree with that.
And yeah. So like, if Pixar came out with, I don't know, like if they came out with basically a Spider-Man type character, like if they were doing, like a Thor CGI film. Well, we've seen Thor, but let's just any character, in the sort of Lightyear style, that would be interesting too. But Lightyear is a character I've seen before, so I'm gonna pass. It's tough. I think eventually we will see this in the household. So outside this room, it's a play. For me in this moment, Elemental is a pass. The last June 16th release, probably released in a limited release, because that's usually what happens with Wes Anderson films. If you're familiar with the auteur. He's the guy behind the Royal Tenenbaums, Darjeeling Limited, Grand Budapest Hotel, so on and so forth. He's coming out with Asteroid City, which of course has a lot of his popular band of cohorts like Jason Schwartzman, but also is adding people like Bryan Cranston, who I don't believe has shown up in another one of his films. And the one that keeps showing up in the trailer is Tom Hanks is in a Wes Anderson film. So is Tom Hanks' bucket list of working with so on and so forth, a director or writer, before he leaves this earth, hopefully in the far, far, far future. But in Weird Things, when I heard he was Tom Hanks in a Baz Luhrmann film for Elvis and now in a Wes Anderson film, I'm like, Tom Hanks is just telling his agent, like, get me in whoever's movie at this point, so when I'm gone, people are like, look at everybody he touched in Hollywood. So Asteroid City, I don't really know anything about the plot, but if it's a Wes Anderson film, you can bet it's a quirky bunch of people in a quirky place that are doing quirky things and so forth, probably with conflicts that are centered around stationery not being the right color, or strange everyday things not being quite right. So anyway, Asteroid City, what do you say, Joel?
Play for me. I really enjoy Tom Hanks. I liked the Grand Budapest Hotel. I saw that on home video, but this is the kind of thing where I have to remind myself that this is an interesting movie and I should make the effort to go to the theater to see it because I want to see it. I don't have to wait for this to hit home video, right? This is something that I would go see in theater as something different. Like I try to pull a note from Steven's book, co-host on the show. He's trying to also see films that he wouldn't necessarily deem as like, box office, like blockbusters in theater. He's trying to go see more films that he wouldn't necessarily see in theaters this year. And I think that that's where Asteroid City pulls me. So play for me.
I'm gonna also play. I think generally I try and catch every Wes Anderson film. There's been some hits, misses. Kind of I'll just rehash my Pixar thing, but at this point, I've missed a few of the past ones, so it's been enough of a lull. I'm back in big for a Wes Anderson film. Next up, I put on here Simply for Myself, Joel. No Hard Feelings, coming out June 23rd. It's a R-rated comedy starring, hey, guess what? Jennifer Lawrence. So of course it's gonna make it on this list. It's basically looks like well, I guess middle-aged at this point, because we all are. Jennifer Lawrence character is sort of like a loser type and is going to be hired by this child's family to be his girlfriend slash like first sex experience, so that he can man up. The trailer is quite strange. The whole concept's quite strange. But if you grew up in the 80s and 90s like Joel and I did, this was a strange thing that would happen a lot. There'd be a comedy about mostly boys losing their virginity and the hijinks around it. Well, guess what? Those kids have grown up and now are writing movies. So of course this movie is coming out. I'll start, Joel. It's going to be a play for me because, again, I love Jennifer Lawrence. She's like one of my top 3 favorite ladies out there, in this sort of proverbial, Mount Rushmore of Hollywood starlets that I love, obviously. But for you, Joel, pass or play on No Hard Feelings?
Pass for me. I generally don't like stuff like this, despite really enjoying Jennifer Lawrence and knowing that she's a phenomenal actor. It's not the type of film I'm generally interested in.
Perfect. All right. Well, talk about things that should be for our general interest. Boy, this is really making my chest tight, both emotionally and anxiety riddled. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, our 5th Indiana Jones film, possibly our final. We said that about Crystal Skull, and they came out with a 5. I don't know. Harrison Ford's still kicking around, but out in the States, June 30th. Pass or play? And I'm going to put a caveat on this, Joel. This is one you have to go see in theaters or you'll never see it in your life. Are you going to pass or play on Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny?
I'm going to say play just because of my investment in the series.
Okay.
Despite the disappointment of Crystal Skull, I will hang the success of Picard's season 3 on me thinking, I will probably enjoy this. If I can see past some of the shortcomings that I see in the trailer, then I think that I'll probably enjoy Indy 5. And it's the kind of thing where I'd like to get a couple of guys together that are all my age. We'll all go and then go for beer afterwards, that kind of thing. People that grew up watching the Indiana Jones trilogy, big Harrison Ford fans, that kind of thing. So it's a play for me. But I'm also fingers crossed that it doesn't look like a green screen dumpster fire. Like there's some scenes in the trailers look awesome and other scenes look ridiculous, like not real at all. And so I'm hoping it looks better in theaters than the trailer.
Yeah, I think unfortunately they could still do more practical effects if their main actor and hero could more practically do things. Bless him, I'm sure Ford can still kick it around. But watching him move around and shrinking on Apple TV, which shout out was a fantastic show. Wow, he looks old. I mean, maybe he leans into it. He plays somebody with Parkinson's, so of course, if he's a good actor, he's got to portray that bit. But he looks old. He looks like he's moving pretty slow. So they filmed Indiana Jones obviously a little bit before shrinking and whatnot. But yeah, if I was held to my same standard, like I should, unless I'm a hypocrite, if I only could see Indiana Jones 5 in theaters or never, I would make the effort. Because Indiana Jones is my favorite. Him and Superman are just my tent poles. I grew up with them. And even if it's Ford's last, even I am an apologist to some degree for Crystal Skull. Back to Steven's point, like not in the sense of like supporting the movies that aren't as big, but what I've come to try to realize as I get older is like, why would I sit down and watch a film to completion if I'm just hating it the whole time? If it's something that has some elements that I loved, why not just enjoy those? And at the end of the day, Crystal Skull was not a good film, and it's not even one that I would really want other people to see. But I'm at the time only going to get so much more Indiana Jones with Harrison Ford. So why not enjoy the 30 to 40 minutes of that film that I thought was actually pretty good? And just appreciate that for what it is. So hopefully Dial of Destiny has 30 to 40 good minutes, if not a full 2 hours, that I can really enjoy. Next up, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Doesn't make me excited that they've already named it Part 1. Joel, pass or play on Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, July 14th in the States.
It's a pass for me. They are always the same. It's always some squirrely, weird way and secretive way of getting to the exact same ending. I don't find that Tom Cruise really stretches much in these films. They're pretty kind of, well, they're action heavy, which is what they're supposed to be. And despite liking Haley Atwell so much, and she's the I guess the female lead in this, I just not on board. I don't need more. I wish that they would do new films like this that weren't part of a franchise, right?
Yeah. You don't know how, like, maybe if this was just a completely new hero, but because it's Tom Cruise, he can get the money behind it. He puts his own money and he puts, his own bones on the line for these films. I agree. If it's a pass for me, if Henry Cavill couldn't get me with his reloading his forearms meme out to see the one he was in, and I haven't seen any since Ghost Protocol, which was 4. I'm not gonna see these. Maybe someday I'll be in a nursing home watching all of these over and over again. Next up is Chris Nolan's Oppenheimer, based off of the the mostly famous scientist who created the atomic bomb or helped create the atomic bomb for the United States. It's out July 21st in the States. Likely another Chris Nolan type of film that's going to have some very interesting filmmaking elements to tell a pretty straightforward story, probably in a not very straightforward way. Joel, Oppenheimer, is that a pass or play for you?
Pass.
Okay. I'm going to pass it as well. I passed Dunkirk. And I passed Tenet. Eventually I saw both, but unfortunately Nolan is, again, I'm sort of in the Pixar realm there, where kind of had some misses. The same weekend, July 21st, I feel like I know the answer, but Margot Robbie stars as Barbie in the live action Barbie film with Ryan Gosling. Hey, some good chops. And Greta Gerwig, very cool director, behind the helm here for Barbie. Are you interested in pass or play?
Pass for me, but not because I don't think it has maybe legs to be entertaining. I just know it's not meant for me, right? Like, my sister might really enjoy it because she grew up playing with Barbies and was part of that whole scene in the 80s and is very much a child of that era. So I can see it doing well for those that it's made for, but you're not going to get me to go see it.
I think Barbie will be, of all the things on this list, might be the one could end up being a surprise huge hit, and they just make more Barbie films / more toy based films, but I think that's because of the people involved and not necessarily the material. But Barbie hasn't had great material, so I'm gonna hit play for Barbie. Haunted Mansion, a second attempt by Disney to make something out of that Disney classic ride into a film. The big name that I know from the trailer offhand is Owen Wilson is in it. It comes out July 28th in the States. Is it pass or play on Haunted Mansion for you, Joel?
Pass, for all the same reasons I mentioned about The Little Mermaid. Like, I just wish they would put money into something original, and come up with something new. It would be way more entertaining and way more fun. For example, Zootopia. I think Zootopia might be the last Disney film that I really, really enjoyed. I'd have to look up to see which other ones have come out because I get confused sometimes between Disney and Pixar, but the Disney films that have come out recently, none of them has been appealing to me.
I'm going to play it, and for the same reason that I still played Muppets Haunted Mansion on Disney streaming, is the Haunted Mansion still has cachet for me. I'll probably watch it and try and enjoy what I can of it, but Muppets Haunted Mansion, honestly, was both quite creepy and quite good. I really recommend that one. So I'm gonna give Haunted Mansion a try with the play here. Next up, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. out August 4th. We're in the dreaded August window of things as kids go back to school and people are tired of movies. But we're putting out a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's backed by Seth Rogen, who apparently has been working behind the scenes on some of these films. I think I was reading, and this leans more towards the original incarnation of Teenage Mutant Turtles, not the 80s and 90s cartoon, but more the comic books they were built off of. That's why the animation looks a little bit more scratchy and whatnot. And I get Spider-Verse vibes of what they're trying to do here with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So Joel, for you, is it a pass or play?
Oh, it's a definite play. I think that looks fantastic. And again, learning my lesson from not seeing Into the Spider-Verse in theaters and having seen the trailer for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles recently, it looks fun. I will go into it knowing it looks like it's aimed at much younger audience members. Like the turtles in the trailer are like 13 or 14. It feels like they're not older. And I mean, again, I grew up watching Ninja Turtles, and I think other animated Ninja Turtle franchises have done well. There was a film a little while ago that had Patrick Stewart as the villain, I think, in it voicing, and that was pretty good. I am struggling to remember if I've seen any of the recent animated television shows for Turtles, but a lot of them were on like Cartoon Network or other US television networks that I don't have access to, that I don't have streaming access to, because they were on like traditional television. And so it's been a little while, but yeah, definitely on board to see Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
I'm going to hit pass. I grew up with the Ninja Turtles, but I've never, since that's one of the few franchises I've kind of grown out of. I would probably have to come to this later, but if it's a gut instinct, I'm going to pass on it. I'm going to pass on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem CGI film. I'm going to flip the last two because I'm more interested in one of them. I know your answer for one of these two, and I don't the other. So I'm going to skip to Blue Beetle, coming out August 18th. It's one of the DC Universe movies, Joel. Is it a pass or a play for you?
It's a pass because, again, I don't think that DC is proceeding with the right... They don't have the right motivation, I don't think. And if you're leading your first film, your benchmark film after The Flash with the Blue Beetle, and you're not trying to go with one of your mainstays, I think that that's an issue. And I think they're forcing it. I think they want to put films out quickly, and they don't have the actors or the story to move the tentpole characters like Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman, Green Lantern. Granted, it's been a while since we've seen a Green Lantern on the big screen, but I think that it's not been long enough since the other films that people are like wanting, a new hero. It's like Marvel had waited long enough between the previous Spider-Man films to introduce Spider-Man into the Marvel Cinematic Universe to where fans were very excited. And if it had been 2 or 3 years since Andrew Garfield finished his run as Spider-Man, people would be just like, wait a second, didn't we just have Spider-Man? So I think that's an important thing to note, and that's why I think that DC is rushing. If DC wanted to knock it out of the park, they would do nothing for like 10 years and then come back and do what they want.
Joel, that doesn't get people paid. That gets people fired, Joel. Come on. So Blue Beetle is one of these deep cut type of heroes they got to redo, and I think they're going with the redo one. I forget his first name. I think his last name's Reyes. It's more the type, if you're familiar with Smallville, of the weird shoehorned Blue Beetle in at the end of that TV show's run, than the classic one, Ted Kord. So it's like a teenage boy getting some cosmic powers and whatnot. This would be one that I think would work better, and it was probably planned to work better once the big tentpole characters were out, and so you could get a Guardians of the Galaxy type hit in the franchise. But now they're sort of counting on this to be a franchise resetter. So for that reason, I'm a pass, because I think that's really scary. Everything about this film is probably preset though, so if it was going to be good, it's probably going to be good despite everything put around it. But still, it's tough. So it's a pass from me. Coming out before that though, on August, I believe 11th, August 11th, and I saved this one. I added this one at the very last minute for you, Joel. They're making a Gran Turismo movie. I know you've brought that up, I believe, in the past, right? You've
Nope.
enjoyed some of the... No, not Gran Turismo. Which one do you play? Forza?
Forza.
Oh, Forza. Yeah. Okay, so Gran Turismo is not... But Are you okay? So let me reset then here. Gran Turismo is a movie that is, I'm reading the storyline verbatim, Joel. The ultimate wish fulfillment tale of a teenage Gran Turismo player whose gaming skills won a series of Nissan competitions to become an actual professional race car driver, based on a true story. It has David Harbour in it, and it's got, who else was on here? Orlando Bloom, I think, is in there. Okay, so what? Joel, pass or play on Gran Turismo?
Pass. Not. It just doesn't. Based on a true story is, I guess, kind of interesting, but like, I've heard nothing about it. I've not even seen the trailer. To me, it just doesn't feel as well. Here's the thing. When I look at, a little bit of the trailer and I read a little bit about it, what it doesn't seem to have is the heart that Ford versus Ferrari had, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think that it's again, it's like Ford versus Ferrari, great racing movie, and then movie studios start putting out all kinds of racing movies, and none of which are as good as the first one that everybody liked, And so I mean, I like David Harbour, I like Orlando Bloom. There's a Spice Girl in it for folks that are interested, but yeah, I don't think that I'm really interested in it.
I'm trying to remember the name of the one. Was it Need for Speed that Aaron Paul was in? That was supposed to be a franchise as well, based off video games, and I think that landed like a duck. So yeah, reading the not only mistaking Gran Turismo as a game franchise that you play, Joel, but also mistaking Gran Turismo for a straight up adaptation of, let's just make a movie around the game. It's like, I guess it's not super meta. It's based on a true story, but somebody who played the game really well and now is a professional race car driver. Yeah, it's really confusing. I think the based on a true story might be the part that lifts it towards an interest. But as this long list is concerned, it's got to be a pass for me as well. So we tried to race through those as fast as Gran Turismo is probably going to race to DVD. That's a dated reference now, Joel. Race to streaming is what I should say. So that was pass or play for the summer of 2023. Thanks for going through that long haul with me, Joel. That was, I think we found some good ones, though. There's a few in there. I believe we knew ahead of time for sure where we were gonna pass or play. But as we talked through some of them, I think you kind of talked me back into the interest of some of them. But that's not the rules of the game, so I tried to be as dedicated as I could.
Well, we have a few other things to mention that we will be covering on the Citadel Cafe probably next time. Steven and I have been talking about The Mandalorian in chunks as it has been released this season. Obviously, this past week, the final chapter 24 in season 3 was released. I really, really enjoyed it. I will say nothing else, just in case anybody hasn't seen it in the last week. But we'll be talking all about that, and probably the last 2 episodes of The Mandalorian next time, as well as a lot of the news coming out of Star Wars Celebration that happened earlier this month. There's awful lot of Star Wars stuff happening, and Steven happens to be a fellow Star Wars fan, so we'll be talking about that next time on the show. If you're enjoying the podcast, then you can also help us make more. The Internet Minute is brought to you by you. The Citadel Cafe is 100% listener supported. If you're getting value out of the show, please consider putting a little bit of value back in. You can become a member at patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. Joining at any level will get you an invite to the member-only Discord server that's shared with my personal Discord, and of course, access to any bonus Barista cuts that we can record. Special thanks go to Bean Counter patrons, Cosmic and Smurf588. Thanks very much for your support of this episode. Patron count is at 27, which is steady on from the last time we recorded. Our goal each time we sit down to record is to have at least one more patron than the previous episode. If you would like to be patron number 28, visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. We're going to stick with Star Wars, and surprise, this is the Lego Star Wars X-Wing Ultimate Collector Series. X-Wing Starfighter set 75355. It is going to be released on May 4th, which is Star Wars Day. May 1st for VIP members, that's me. 1,949 pieces. I'm not sure why they couldn't find one to add it to an even 1950, but that's where we are. $319.99 Canadian. If you add the sales tax in where I live, that works out to 18 cents a piece. So it's not a cheap set, but it's big. We're talking Ultimate Collector Series scale. So it is 55 centimeters or 21.5 inches long. It is 27 centimeters or 10.5 inches high, and the width is 44 centimeters. That's 17.5 inches. So it is up there with my recent model of the Space Shuttle Discovery, which was another UCS set that I have. So it would look mighty fine on the other side of my TV, which will bookend with the real space shuttle and a fantasy space fighter. So I'm looking forward to checking this out. It's really, really cool looking. I have the playset X-Wing. I have like the minifig scale X-Wing, which is, I think, just Red 5. I think it's Luke Skywalker's X-Wing. And that was a fun little set to put together. And it looks nice on top of the bookshelf. It's the same scale as like the Y-Wing and the other things that I have. But man, this large detail-filled UCS version looks fantastic for the X-Wing. Have you seen this before?
Oh my gosh, all these sort of and I think the details, to your point, the one piece. But that's the thing. It's the point is the details, Joel. So if one extra piece would make somebody look at this and say, "This is not going to work. This is not as detailed." That's why Lego, you always admire their commitment and their focus. So hey, not a piece wasted, not a piece overdone. So although one more piece would bring down your per piece total. I love that note.
Well, that wraps up this episode of the Citadel Cafe. You can get more information about the show and links to some of the things that we talked about at thecitadelcafe.com. Music for the show was composed by Kevin MacLeod. You can email us at thecitadelcafe@gmail.com or find the show by name on Twitter. Subscribe for free on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, really wherever you can find a podcast. Make sure to leave a rating and a review or even a comment on the YouTube channel. Word of mouth is the easiest way to support the show. It's free. Just tell friends where they can listen to the Citadel Cafe and let them know that you think it's a good show. My name is Joel Duggan. You can find everything that I'm doing online at joelduggan.com. That includes links to my other podcasts like The Spawn Chunks at thespawnchunks.com. You can follow me at Joel Duggan on social media and Joel Duggan on Twitch, where I stream almost every day. I take Mondays off for the Spawn Chunks, but the rest of the time I flip-flop between Lego on Fridays and Minecraft the rest of the time. But I'm looking to get back into Satisfactory now that my current Minecraft project is wrapping up. Brockett, where can people find you online?
At the Cat Volver on all the socials that matter. Also, let me say, if you would like this to be revealed, Joel, happy pre-birthday. Your birthday is coming up on Saturday, but happy birthday to you.
And a happy belated to you as well. I know we spoke via text, but our birthdays are only, like a week apart? Something like that.
Yeah, 23rd and 29th.
You've been listening to the Citadel Cafe, where we are fast, easy, and cheap, but you can only pick two.